Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the time to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneur. Welcome to Never Been Promoted. Hi, I'm your host, Thomas Helfrich. Thanks for joining today. It's going to be a fun conversation. We're going to talk about future-ready organizations, how you get some change with a pretty darn good expert, Tedx talker, Friska. And her last name's unpronounceable by Americans. Wirya. It's a really cool name, by the way. I don't know anyone named Friska. I know obviously one person named Friska. Wirya. I'm going to let her beat me up for that. But the point of that marketing technique is now you're thinking, how do you spell it? And you're going to go look it up. Perfect, right? Friska. If you guys can see the camera, my hair is doing an alfalfa in the back. That's beautiful. We're just going to go with it. Thanks. But guys, if you don't know, our mission, by the way, is to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship by cutting the tide of kind of all the stuff holding you back. And there's lots of them. There's fears, there's excuses, there's senses of entitlement. There's this former self that you have that you got to dump. You got to get somebody new. You want to get successful in entrepreneurship or life, even you got to make changes, and sometimes they're really hard. Today we're gonna talk about how you change an organization and how you harness that change to do the most with it. But the idea behind any of the things that we talk about really is that you have to move forward, and you have to make sure you break this cycle of fears, excuse, because right in the middle of that cycle, and that is you. And if you can't get out of the idea, I can't overcome a fear, and I'll make an excuse that makes sense. If you can't get out of that, you're never going to advance to these goals and things that you think you can that you want, but you just don't think you can get to. So from our journey today that we'll be on with Friska, learn from her journey, learn from what she learned from the world, and learn. And she's got a lot of cool stuff about the future too. Only call to action, go to youtube.com/@neverbeenpromoted. And that's my enough shameless plugs. Friska coming to the stage live. Friska, how are you?
Yo, good. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Do you want to fix my hair, or do you want to fix your last name pronunciation? Which do you prefer?
I can't control your hair. My surname is Wirya.
Is that what a surname is? I knew that was the last name. See, that's
yes.
American. You knew that. Wirya. I do this intentionally only because it's funny to me and no one else. And that's the funny part for me, is when no one else thinks that's an entertaining thing to do. But also then I say your name a bunch of times. Friska. You're in Australia, so thank you for joining us. You're not in Australia right now.
I'm not in Australia. I'm in Bali.
I mean, talk about it's hard to upgrade from Australia, and somehow you've done it. All right, yeah. Bali, you're a world, yes. So you're a digital nomad. It's great.
Pretty much, yeah. So 90% of what I do is remote. I mean, like it or love it. The C word had, a few blessings in disguise, and a lot of those.
Wait. The C word in the U.S. is a very bad word that Australians use all the time.
COVID.
Are you talking about COVID as opposed to the other C word, the C bomb?
COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought that was spelled with a K even. I had no idea.
Yeah. So post-pandemic, a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders are willing to engage consultants on a 99.9% remote basis. So ever since our borders opened, I was planning on how I can expand internationally without being tethered to one spot. And I did that a year ago.
Amazing.
Mm.
Let's talk about accents real quick, because this has nothing to do with our topic. So it's always fun to start in one direction and then you turn it.
Yeah.
Accents. All right. And correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe she says. So tell me the upscaling accent. So for U.S. Australians have an upscaled accent. British do as well. I would say, I won't say the ones that are downscaled. I don't want people to be offended. So we'll say there's some that we don't like. In Australia, what are the upscale ones? And then you can offend. What's the downscale one?
Well, people swoon over the French and the Italian accents. Yeah.
Like English accents with Italian accent, or just the Italian language?
Just the Italian. Yeah. English accents, not so much. I mean, we were colonized and settled by the British, so it's kind of very common. But it's it's the other more exotic accents that are quite favorable down under.
What is the why are you guys down and what are you under?
We're down pretty much everything. We are the most isolated southern continent in the world. So everything's basically north of us. The only thing left south is Antarctica.
Tasmania, right? That's what I know.
Well, that is part of Australia.
Is it?
Yes.
So Americans are excellent at geography. Let me tell you. I don't know how long Canada's been part of Mexico, but apparently we don't own either. All right, let's dive into your journey a bit. Okay, so we're talking about this future-ready organization. How do you change one? Like it's even as a small business owner, when you want to make changes, you got to be conscious of the teams you have. Even if a few people, when you start multiplying that, that can have some catastrophic or massively multiplier effects. You want to start with your journey a little bit? First, start with what you do, and Fresh by Friska, and then kind of back up to what's relevant of your journey.
Sure. So I would describe myself as a multi-hyphenate. So Fresh by Friska does many things. My bread and butter is very much being a fractional change leader, trusted change and transformation consultant that guides some of the world's largest organizations to help them pivot from A to B more smoothly, more effectively, and with less pain. And when I say less pain, less missed milestones, less disengagement, less reduction in morale, etc. I also run quite a few different training programs all around influencing without formal power, cross-cultural communication, presenting powerfully, trust and rapport, and of course, change management and transformation. I also speak at quite a few events. So I just got back from the US last week. So I was in Denver for the week, speaking at a digital transformation conference. Last year, I published my first book called The Future Fit Organization. And that was, it overwhelmed me, the results of that book. So it went to #1 in 36 hours. It got 3 other best-selling categories in 3 days. And my second book, The Future Fit Asian Organization, will be out in December. And that's being published by Penguin Random House, the world's largest publisher. So you could say I've been obsessed with change for well over a decade. And I've been, observing, studying, why do some changes stick and some just fall apart after a few months. And from these learnings and these strategies that I've developed, I've applied them in environments as diverse as Melbourne to Mumbai to Manado. So that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell. In terms of why is change so hard, it's because as much as we don't like to admit it, we are very emotional, illogical, and irrational creatures, especially when we are presented with change. Our natural knee-jerk reaction is to push back, is to resist. And don't get me wrong, this served us well in the prehistoric eras, right? It avoided our ancestors being eaten by dinosaurs. But in 2024, it's a pain in the ass.
I'd like to point out that humans were not alive during the dinosaurs, just to be clear. Maybe a lion or other humans from eating them. But I just want to make sure that she was kidding metaphorically. I'm like, what are you talking about dinosaurs? What kind of biblical thing are you talking about? Yeah. You know, the Bible doesn't even address dinosaurs.
I know, bizarre. It's very weird.
Someone would have uncovered a bone.
We've got all the relics. They clearly existed.
Right. I mean, because they were like, there was less dirt between them and them getting buried. You'd think at some point they're like, Wonder why there was giant animals all buried here. Not mention it. Probably not
Yeah.
important. Sorry, I interrupted you there. By the way,
No.
congratulations on your book. Did the first one go Penguin House too, or was it because the first one was so successful you kind of traded the paperclip up for the next level on the book?
So for my first book, I initially had my heart set on Wiley as a publisher. And I had a few calls with them, and the publishing director at the time said, got it, you're clearly very passionate, very articulate and experienced in this area, but we've published other books on change and transformation, and there's just no market for it. They just don't sell. And, saying that to someone like me is like red rag to a bull. So I was like, you know what? I don't need you. I said, and I decided I was going to do it myself. So I self-published. And yeah, it exceeded beyond my expectations. And because the first one was successful, I got a book deal for the second one with Penguin, which is even bigger and better than
Yeah.
Wiley.
I mean, the reason I ask is because I have a book coming out called Cut the Tie, and I'm hybrid. It's self-publishing, but a hybrid, like someone to kind of take you through the thing. I own the content. It's probably the end of that.
Yep.
And I was like, and people are like, why didn't you go to a bigger author? I'm like, I'm an unwritten, unknown author. No publisher's going to publish you. So you have to kind of do the first one yourself. And I try to find these reflective moments because there's some people out there listening that are like, hey, I want to write a book. You're going to have to probably do it yourself. You could do a hybrid model where someone helps you, or you get a ghostwriters and things like that. But the expectation that you jump right into a Penguin or Wiley, manage that expectation. That's all.
But can I say, Thomas, like you have built your reputation and following over the years, you don't need a big name publisher. And that is exactly what someone told me, because I was about to knock on another door, like another publisher. And that's what they said. They said, look, you're not starting from absolutely ground zero. You've already got a viral TED talk. You've won all these awards. You've been in the paper. You've been in Vogue, blah, 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 blah. So you're not starting from nothing. You've already built some sort of platform based on your personal brand. And that is what is going to sell books. And they were right. I didn't pay a marketing agency. I didn't buy ads. I didn't invest in PR. So people that bought the book, it's because they've been following me for a while and they're invested in my success. And that was, that was proven like nearly instantly. I didn't expect to be at #1 in just over a day.
Congratulations, by the way. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I want to say is never let anyone tell you that you can't do anything, because I had dreams of seeing my book in bookstores, and at the time it was only available online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, etc. So I spoke to a contact who was the ex-publisher for Wiley. He was there for 20 years. And when I called him excited and I said, oh my God, I'm going to approach some bookstores, blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, whoa. Let me just, manage your expectations. Like, you're a first-time author. No bookstore is going to stop you. But if you do want to approach people, just make sure you've got, a dollar figure in mind, which is the wholesale price. Long story short, it's stocked in Kinokuniya, Periplus, which, has a couple of hundred bookstores, and a few bookstores in Sydney, independent, called Title. My books are in there because I physically walked in the door and just spoke to the person that was behind the counter or that was responsible for procurement. Just introduce myself. Here's me. Here's my book. Try it out. And I think the point is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So just because it didn't work for someone else doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. And that same person gave me the same feedback when I said, I'm all about momentum, and I wanted to leverage the momentum of the first one. I thought, I've got a second idea in mind and I'm going to target an even bigger publisher. So that person told me to not waste my time, actually, that they wouldn't give someone like me the time of day. So yeah, just goes to show, take all the advice that you get with a pinch of salt. Just because that's what their experience is, it doesn't mean your experience is going to be exactly the same. So just bet on yourself and bet big.
I think a pinch of salt's wrong, because I like salt. So I take several pinches. I'm thinking like a pinch of ginger or something like that.
I love ginger.
Buckles your back a little when you first eat it. You're like, No, you're right. So things don't happen unless you make it happen. And I say this with some criticisms from some people, but you're 100% responsible for your success or failure. So, and what I mean is if you just take that and quit, then yeah, you're not going to, but if you say, yeah, I just don't like that advice, I'm going to keep moving. So good for you. But let me tell you something. How did you get into the change itself? So did you have a corporate job? Tell me where you kind of, and with your kind of corporate learnings or how you learned it. And then when you launched your Fresh by Friska.
So I was in general management consulting. I was living in LA at the time and I felt really bored and unfulfilled. I just felt every client engagement was the same, just different slide pack. You put a new logo on it. And I went back to Australia after 4 years. And when I went back to Australia, change management was only started to be recognized as a discipline. And it intrigued me. It played to all my strengths. Every day was different because every change is different. Every leader is different. And it would keep me on my toes. And I liked that variety. But no one would give me a chance because A, didn't have any experience, B, didn't have any qualifications. And so I did a lot of door knocking and I finally had a company willing to take me on as a change analyst. So I moved from an MBA qualified experienced management consultant to start at the very bottom. I took a 40% haircut to learn the ropes and start from nothing. And I did lots of different changes, structural, cultural, technological, systemic, etc.
Yep.
And did all the shit clients, all the hard engagements. Fast forward 7 years later, I was the youngest GM of change for the biggest gold mining company in the Southern Hemisphere. But it's because I'd done the hard rungs. And in those 7 years, I've gotten many bits of paper, many qualifications, many certifications. Fresh by Friska was birthed November 2019. So my contract came to an end and I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I didn't want to continue being on the corporate hamster wheel. I had a lot of money, but I didn't have much meaning, and I wanted to have more wonder in my life instead of worry. And it was the kind of company that was really toxic, really aggressive culture, lots of bullying bullshit happening behind the scenes. And I thought, bloody hell, there must be a better way to make a buck. And I'd always had amazing feedback from peers, managers, etc. And I thought, well, why not bet on myself? Because I don't want to look back when I'm 60 and wonder what if I took the path less traveled? What if I tried to create something out of nothing? And I said to myself, you know what, corporate's always going to be there, but time's ticking away. And while you've got the energy, the financial cushion, and the drive to make something happen, let's just press the gas. So that was November 2019. A few months later, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, as you know, that was an absolute shit show, especially in Australia, where we were the most locked down in the world. Like, it was such draconian measures. So the shit thing was, when all our borders shut, it took with it my entire pipeline. Because I didn't come from a big name consulting firm. I wasn't a McKinsey or a Deloitte or whatnot. And clients weren't used to hiring consultants on the other end of a Zoom. And so I had to focus on what I could control, which was myself. And I realized that despite all that, it was an opportunity because everybody was at home, everybody was online, everybody was very open to being educated, entertained, and inspired. And so I set about sharing my knowledge, my wisdom with the world. And because I'm B2B, I started on LinkedIn. And back then, videos were like skyrocketing in popularity and it won a lot of algorithm likes. So I started doing 60-second case study videos on change, like what good looks like, tips and tricks, strategies, etc., etc. And I grew my following really, really quick. I think it 5x'd in about 10 months. Big buoyed by the positive response from that, I started getting inquiries for workshops and can you speak at this and blah, 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 blah. And it's just turned, like anything, when you generate enough momentum, it turns into a snowball. And they're now a permanent fixture of what I offer. So I would say I'm a multi-hyphenate because I don't just do one thing. I get bored very easily. I do a few different things. And yeah, so that journey was just over 3 years ago. And since then, it's spawned into other things. So yes, the books, the speaking, the advisory, the consulting, but I'm also launching Future Talk. So Future Talk is a conversation card game for leaders, 86 questions across 6 categories, designed so you can have real, raw, relatable, and honest conversations about changes happening in your business and what it means to your people. Just because I find that leaders don't know what to ask and how to ask it. And so what happens is it's the things left unsaid in the room that can kill an organization when it could have been salvaged just if you had the balls to have the conversations that you need to have, not that you want to have necessarily, but these come to Jesus moments. So I've got that bubbling away.
By the way, I find it usually doesn't take balls. It takes usually the ovaries are the ones who ask the harder questions. Usually the balls are the bullies.
Yeah, right.
I know. I'm gonna throw that out there. And if you're a female with balls, you're not a female. Just to be very, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Identify as you will, but if you have balls, you're still not a female. All right. That aside, didn't mean to bring that in. Just had a visual there. I was like, well, could it anyway? You talked about leading this corporate and this contract and in the and you launched in that moment. Your timing of it was actually probably really good because you had all the upfront work, and then because of COVID, all you could do is focus on infrastructure of yourself, right? Like you had to focus on your brand, on you.
100%. It's all about brand building. Yep.
Right. And you wouldn't have probably done that if it was just same old, because you've been chasing deals and that would have.
Correct. I would have been having endless coffee chats, going to networking meetings, yada, yada. Yeah.
And I think that mindset, right, is something that I'm pulling from your stories. You had the mindset of let's make the best of the time we have right now of what we're doing. It is what it is. I can't control that. And I think that's when you and I first connected, was probably closer to back that time when I had first started AI Nerd or my original.
Correct. Yes, that was still very new. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like my first run at it, and we're two people across the world bored of COVID, stuck at home trying to figure things out. And so I remember the journey, and you and I have been speaking for a while, but I think the point is the mindset was right. It's like, hey, whatever's going on, maybe you're unemployed, maybe you're about to get laid off, isn't it? You want to start a side hustle, don't know. Just make the best of what's right in front of you, not what of all. There's a million things that could go wrong, a million, not more. Just focus on the one or two things you can do today to make it better, and you did that. So, take me down the Tedx route a little bit here. So obviously, very cool brand to be a part of. How did you prepare for it? Why did tell me about what you did with that a little bit, because that's such a cool accomplishment. People don't realize it's kind of hard to get on one of those. Maybe not for you.
For some reason, in the space of 7 days, 3 different people said, you should do a TED Talk. It just happened so randomly. And I thought, you know what? I should do a TED Talk. Why the hell not? And so I went online. At the time, I was in Sydney, and I was looking for, obviously, Sydney events. So for those that don't know, each TED is run independently, which makes it quite challenging and manual and effort intensive to figure out which ones are open, which ones are accepting speaker applications, etc., etc. Long story short, Sydney was closed. All right, okay, fine. Happy to hop over to the next date. Melbourne was still open. Applied to Melbourne. And so each TED Talk has a theme, and you are invited to submit a talk related to that theme. And their theme was binary. And the talk that I applied to do is not the actual talk that I ended up doing. I wanted to talk about different cultures, ethnic cultures, what it's like, growing up looking like this in a very Caucasian country when there's no one else that looks like you, talks like you, and everyone thinks you're weird. So I applied. You get asked 3 questions. All TED Talks are the same. What's your one big idea? Why does the world need to hear about your idea right now? Why are you the best person to deliver this idea? So that's an essay. And then you have to submit a 60-second pitch just talking about why you're passionate about this idea. I got a response in less than a week, and it was an email. And the email was very, very long. And as soon as I see a long email, I think it's a rejection. I thought, oh, shit, didn't get it. But then I read it again, and it wasn't a rejection email, it was an acceptance, but. So they said, look, thank you so much for submitting. We can tell you're very passionate about this topic. However, we've already accepted 3 other people talking about very similar topics. We've LinkedIn stalked you, and you have quite a long, illustrious background in transforming organizations. Would you mind talking about that instead? Best business card ever, right?
Yeah.
You're invited to talk about what you do for a freaking living. So after much shrieking around the kitchen table, of course, I said yes.
Could you replicate that right now? I mean, could you just turn the camera and try to replicate it with as much emotion as possible without falling over? Now,
I was doing like,
she tried. She did. I didn't hear the shrieking, but we're gonna accept that. We'll voice that. We'll dub voice that in later.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I was kind of behind the 8 ball because everybody else already had their talk. So I had to create a completely new talk. And then, I'm the type of person that doesn't leave anything up to chance. I rehearsed about 3-4 hours a day for about 6 weeks straight. Yeah,
that's an incredible amount of practice. I've heard that from most people. The rule is just don't suck. Get up there and don't suck. And your content might not be specifically perfect. People don't know what you were going to say versus what you say. So just say it with confidence. Just go with it. And don't suck.
Because why would you take any chance that you could stuff it up? It doesn't make sense to me. Like,
I wouldn't wing that one.
Don't come every year. Like, it's just insane. So, I researched a lot of people that had done TED Talks, and some of them gave very useful tips. Like, for example, Tim Ferriss, I remember he said he would intentionally sleep deprive himself and drink a lot of coffee to mimic same day situation, because most likely you'll be nervous and you wouldn't have slept the night before, just so it becomes embedded in your body. He also gave a suggestion.
How did you even get Tim Ferriss's time? Let's start with that.
No, he did a video about it.
Gotcha.
He did a video about his Tedx preparation. So I watched it.
You got to meet with Tim Ferriss. The 4-hour workday.
Yeah, 4-hour work week. Yeah. And another great tip he gave was, don't practice your talk in one location, because if you always practice in the bedroom, for example, come TED Talk day, you're not in your bedroom and your body freezes because it thinks it's got your bedroom as a crutch. So I was in the living room, I was in the sofa, I was in the backyard, I went for a walk around the block. I made sure to practice in a lot of different varied scenarios. Right. And also I did a lot of practice audiences. So I road tested my TED Talk to a group of leaders at Oracle, to some of my friends' staff that owned companies, just so the day of, my body thinks, no stress. You've done this 3-4 times before. It's exactly the same.
So take me to day of. Take me to the day of.
The day of?
The moments right before. Tell me about the day.
Okay, so when you watch my TED Talk, you would have no idea that all this happened. Like, I was freaking out like hell. So the TED Talk event that I spoke at didn't have a projector, didn't have anything. So I didn't have any slides. Didn't have any whatevers. I just had to stand on that red dot. And to make it interesting, I had to get creative. I'm like, okay, if I can't use images to bring my concepts to life, what can I use? So I had props. I won't give it away for people, but you can watch it. I was like a magician. I had things that I would bring out of my pockets at certain times during my talk. Now, somehow, when I was walking from the green room about to go onto stage, I lost one of my props. And I was literally, me and about 4 volunteers were on our hands and knees trying to find my prop. And the talk wouldn't have worked without the prop. It totally stuffed it up, and I was hyperventilating.
Oh my! Because now you're on improv. You know your stuff. You can say it backwards and forwards, and now you're like,
I'm missing the punchline because that was part of the joke, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ!
I can imagine then. And if I had this prop that I dropped in the back, which would
Yeah, I
make
know.
what is this?
I
Like, you
know.
couldn't do that. That doesn't work for TEDx. Like you could do it if
I
it was just like
know.
a Oracle
And
or someplace else.
and the lady was like, you have to get on stage, like with or without the prop. And I said, just give me one more time. And I literally was like hands and knees all over. And I finally found the little prop.
What was the prop?
It was a little granny.
A what?
A granny, a toy granny.
What's a granny?
A grandmother.
Oh, grandma. So
A grandmother.
listen, I know English is a second language for Australia, so sometimes the accent's tough. Americans.
Yeah, anyway, I found it, but
Good
I was
job.
so flustered. My heart was beating like boom, 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 boom. And my mind went blank. I literally couldn't remember a thing. And I just kept on saying to myself, just remember the first sentence. Just remember the first sentence. And finally, the first sentence came to me. And because I'd rehearsed it so much every single day, it was like muscle memory. And then it just was all seamless. It was all perfect. Perfect. Exactly as I'd rehearsed it. Yeah.
Do you and I find is difficult to remember are the pauses. Sorry. Do you see what I did there? Everyone listening going, yes, yes. But it's funny because did you find when you're there, you have a cadence, you have so many words per minute you want to try to say. Did you find that you're speeding up or in out of, because I know personally, I find that I tend to speed up. I know a lot of people tend to speed up and not pause when they need to when they speak. Like, did you have it so well rehearsed where your cadence was nailed and you had it within a few seconds of how you practiced it?
I had a 2-second difference.
That's fantastic. So that's well done. So that's well done. Congratulations.
Thank
All right.
you.
So hey, let's shift gears. Tell me about what you do for the world today. So you like take me through like a typical use case, or atypical, and you can be somewhat shameless here on this as a plug. This is the change. This is the thing that I love to do more than anything right now for my business. Like what is it, and what can I learn from what you're like? Give me some like listicle on do's and don'ts.
For my business, you mean?
Yeah. Like who do you love to serve? Like what's the problem you come in and go, got it?
Resistance is a killer of all growth and innovation in organizations. It sounds simple, but if it was simple, I wouldn't be in business. At the end of the day, people push back on everything. So I'm able to identify what is the root cause that's driving this pushback and suggest non-nuclear ways, safe ways to get people to be open to doing things completely different to the way they've been doing in the past. They may have been doing the same thing for 30 years. I'm able to get them to think differently and act differently.
Did you just say, hey, listen, if you don't, you're going to get fired, and that's it?
No.
You don't come in and go, I have an axe and I have a carrot. You can have either one. Would you want a carrot or the axe?
But you need both the carrot and the stick. It's knowing what types of carrots and sticks to bring to the party. Yeah.
So talk about that. So let's say you're a leader of an organization and you're now faced with this. I really need to make changes, but no one freaking listens. No one's going to do it. They've always done it. Whenever I hear we do this because we've always done this, it's like that to me is immediately like, well, maybe we should look at that process, because that means you're not thinking about of how to improve it or how to advance or whatever else. Yeah. What's the advice, kind of a first step, the TED Talk first step advice, if you will, to give to the executive over the transformation or the change that's needed?
I think know what's underneath the fear. So people push back because they fear losing something. And what they fear losing is one of these P's. Okay, you ready? The first, obvious, position, scared of losing their job. The second, pay. Like, does this change mean it's going to be harder for me to get my bonus? I don't know. The third is performance. This particular change may make it harder for me to attain or improve my performance. It could be I'm required to learn a completely different skill set, or it could be I'm changing reporting lines. The fourth is prestige. So prestige can mean different things to different people. Prestige could mean a black Amex to one person. Prestige could mean a corner office. Prestige could be in a parking spot that's closest to the entry door. So you have to understand what that means for the person. The fifth is performance. So performance is a big one. And then we have power. So some people are on a power trip. And again, that power trip is fueled by different sources. So you have to figure out what that is. And last but not least is protection, especially in the cases of mergers and acquisitions. Some people may feel exposed, especially when they've always been the child favorite of a leader who's now no longer there. So yeah, those are the 6 Ps. One or more of those 6 Ps is driving someone to push back. So you have to figure out what it is.
I would have to guess at times too. It's the it's probably a mix. Do you do it? How do you facilitate that as an assessment that takes out there that so people then weight what was most important to them? You can come back with a the good old consultant pie chart that says, hey, this is the problem, or is this more something you use? Or like, how do you facilitate it? Is probably the question I'm asking to discover that.
Holistic is the answer. It's my own personal observations, asking really targeted questions in a non-intimidating way. I conduct a lot of interviews. And when I say interviews, it's not me grilling someone like the Spanish Inquisition. It's more like an informal chat to get people to open up about really what's happening underneath Bugbear. And observation is another one. And I come with a lot of experience. So most of things I've seen before, and I've had similar cases. So I'm able to provide that advice to the client organization. But yeah, it's not just me looking at things. Like, change is very much a co-creative, iterative, evolutionary process. It's not something you just do once and then you execute to the bitter end. Like, every month you have to be monitoring, you have to be adjusting. It's quite an agile process.
I would think at different levels, right? So the change, let's say in the lower level non-management would probably be position pay, performance, and I'd have to guess then as you go up, it's prestige, power starts taking over more than that, and protection would probably, I would guess, ban across most all, but because they're related. But do you see that scale? Well, hey, I'm going to lose all my power. Like, I'm going to lose my fiefdom if you do this. I manage 1,000 people. What do you mean we're going to automate? I'm going to only have 100 people now. I'm not going to be. I'm not as valuable. Like, is it kind of, does that how that works, or is there a different dynamic?
Yes, and also like I encountered this just last month. Some people's sense of prestige is rooted in their ability to be popular or to please everybody. Like, literally, one CEO said like their processes were so inefficient, they were losing revenue. I said, well, something needs to give. And he said, if we change all these processes, people are going to get upset. We can't do that. It's like, well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, no change, no progress, and no progress, no change. So yeah, his sense of prestige was rooted in being Mr. Popular, Mr. Nice Guy.
Wow.
So
what do you do?
Always...
So you figure out the top one. What happens next?
So I then determine who's the best messenger to deliver this to the sponsor, because sometimes I'm not the best person to say, hey, you've got a problem of A, B, and C with this person. More important than getting the data and getting the insights and recommendations is how you deliver it, right? We've all heard that saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I spend a lot of time making sure that the message lands and it results in the executive sponsor taking the action that I want them to take.
Gotcha. Do you, how long is is a typical project last? I mean, do you take it through implementation, or you take it through just assessment strategy and say, now go get it done? Or how far do you go with the client?
Depends on their budget. Most of the time they want me through to the very end. So I'm in the beginning, very heavy, very intensive, doing all the assessments, developing the strategy. And then I always say to them, look, this is your change, not my change. It'd be great if you could give me some high potentials or some people from within your team that can take this forward, because you don't want to always be reliant on me to keep pushing it forward. And then I coach and mentor their own internal team so they can keep going without me.
Now, so from an entrepreneurial standpoint, to kind of tie it back, so there's a lot of people out there who are trying to build services. They have knowledge. It's a consulting advisory type of role. Very common, very easy business to start, very hard to scale because it's your time for money. So you have to make sure you're charging enough. And anybody who's doing this, by the way, if you're, working in a company and they're billing you out at $500 an hour, don't feel bad about also billing yourself out at nearly the same rate, because you could say, I'm going to be more efficient, more niche, less waste, less overhead. I could do the same work, less time, but it's the same value. So so the point is, don't underestimate your value on that. But how are you managing? And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to first hear how you're managing the hunt kill cycle. So when you're by yourself doing services for time while you're working, you have less time to go hunt. And then you have to go, and then you kill, meaning like you get a new deal, you're back into that. So you get sometimes revenue cycles. Oh, I got money, I'm broke. So to be. How are you managing that? So let me hear how you do the follow-up after that answer.
So how I manage that is I make sure that I have partners, referrers, collaborators. I make sure I have a network of those sort of people. That way, work isn't just dependent on me hunting, so to speak. They often have a need that they can't fulfill. So you know how people say always be selling? My thing is always be connecting. So always be connecting with interesting people, because you never know where it may lead. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, I had a workshop for a huge oil and gas player, right? That happened through a referral because I connected with somebody on LinkedIn. So I connect with people who aren't just my ideal clients, but people who serve the same clients. And when the more people that know what you do and how you add value, the more that they'll realize, hey, you can actually make them look good, and it adds to their relationship as well. So that's my strategy.
You've made the investment. And this is the point. This is why I figured, and wanted you to explain that, because I think if people are out there, that doesn't happen overnight. This journey for her started, let's say 2020, formally really got into it. And here we are in 2024. The point being is you made the investment because you knew that you needed a network, not to that inner circle of buyers who's very protective. They're very go away.
They're always being sold to, right?
You're never going to go away. And personally knowing you, I've seen your content for years. It is always give. And I don't agree with the Gary V, jab, jab, punch. It's so aggressive. Don't do that. That's don't. If you're doing service, don't do that. It's okay to have a call to action. Hey, if you want to have a discussion, but don't sell. Just give value. And you've done that for years. And your network's going from a few hundred, a few thousand to almost 30,000 followers already on LinkedIn and others. And your strategy has been perfect with that, because now you said I focused on the outer circle that's also selling into there, but don't sell what you sell. And they have connections, and as they get success, they get trust with that inner circle of buyers, and they bring you in via that kind of door. And that strategy does not happen overnight, and you don't sell that outer group. You help them as well. So hey, somebody who does let's say technical development, whatever. So you might be like, I got a lead for you. You can give it back and forth. That does not happen overnight. But what it does do is build a sustainable business that takes away the peaks and valleys of a solo services business. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Are you thinking stay solo so you can stay light and agile and be able to be in Bali? Or are you thinking ever of building that formal consulting firm?
Not interested. The world doesn't need another consulting firm. I'm not interested in hiring fresh graduates. That's just not my business model. When you've got hundreds of millions of dollars on the line and you're leading a transformation, the last thing I want to do is give it to someone that's never done it before, that's just got a playbook. No, that's not my strategy. So because it's just me, I partner with people who are just as experienced or even more experienced than I am. For example, head of HR for one of the world's biggest banks. These are the people that I know because I've built up that network, and we go after high impact projects together. So even though Fresh by Friska is me, it doesn't mean that it's literally just me helping transform these large organizations. So I do have a network of high caliber, very experienced people dotted all around the world, ex-CEOs, ex-transformation directors. They also are sick of the 9 to 5, but we all have the blessing to cherry pick the kind of work that we want to do now, because we've been there, done that. We share the same philosophy. We share the same values of high performance, collaboration, integrity, etc. So that's what's worked for me. Not interested in having a bunch of analysts underneath me at all. Yeah.
The point of that is know what kind of business you want to build. So if you're building towards, I want to have a consulting firm where I'm just managing people, your work that you're going to do is going to be different than the work you're doing now. You couldn't do your model and the strategy because yours is based on your knowledge and other things like that. Typically, unless you're so busy, you're like, hey, I just need you to go document these like low level activities. Fine. But even then you might be like, do you really need a former employee, or you can just bring someone along that does it well and you can pay them pretty well to do it. The point is you stayed in line to what fits your lifestyle and what you want versus that. So I think as entrepreneurs are out there, think about what you want. Fast forward 10 years, what kind of business do you want? It's really important because it changes the kind of work and services you offer, period. It really changes that trajectory. As you look forward though, too, I know as someone who gets bored very easily, tell me about what's the entrepreneurial ADD that we all have. What's the one that's about to pull out of your head and make it to paper? What's the next big idea for you?
So many people have said, please launch a podcast. Love to hear you talk more about A, B, and C. So the first episode of Future Fit with Friska will be dropping in a few weeks' time. As you know, everything I do is high quality. So they're all shot in studio. And the guests that I have are probably people that you have never heard about, but you should. They don't have big followings, but they're doing really interesting, impactful work, and they embody what a future fit leader is. So I don't want to open my kimono as of yet, but watch this space. It's very interesting. I've already got this, guests clamoring. I haven't even released it, and I've already got guests clamoring to be part of the second season. So that's probably the nearest term project. The second is Future Talk, the leadership conversation card game. The third, I'm launching the Future Fit Awards. So it's a world first awards to highlight, acknowledge companies and leaders that have the foresight to understand that their people stack is more important than their tech stack. That, impact isn't just about environment, but it's society as well as financial. So this is going to be completely industry agnostic. There's a lot of innovation awards out there, but they're all sponsored by tech companies. So I think there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there.
Small independence issue there.
Yes, it's just a minor issue. So I'm looking to launch the in-person awards night in Bali, Q1 next year at one of the luxury 5-star hotels in Nusa Dua. So
I'd like to get on that award list. Don't care what the category is. It could be for best janitor that never was. So I want to, just because I have the inside of knowledge of you were talking about this a year ago, and to the point what I want to make to people is, yes, a podcast might be next for you or whatever the next thing is. You should move fast, but you have to make sure it's aligned to other strategies. And you're very careful with how you do this and thorough with it. And so I want people to know that is not a new an entrepreneurial ADD thought she had this morning. Something like 18 months ago. And I think at the time when you and I were talking, I was like, hey, I think, I'm about to go launch a new podcast. AI nerd. And you were like, oh my gosh, why? And I'm like, because I'm done with that kind of brand. And that was a hard time because I was like, I'm taking a monetized channel and saying, I think I want to do something different. And I appreciate what you're doing because that does change your brand a little to be, moves towards more I assume more speaking engagements, those kind of things. Keynotes would certainly be something that's interesting to you as well. Just listen, first, call to action time, shameless plug. Everybody listening, don't hang up. She's going to tell you how to get a hold of her, and more importantly, how to get you to come speak at their event. So shameless plug time. Fire away.
Thank you. I'm most contactable on linkedin.com/in/Friska. You can send me a DM there. My website is on the screen. It's freshbyfriska.com. Please be specific about what you're after because I get bombarded with DMs that seem to be completely pointless. So don't be subtle, be obvious with what you're looking for and how I can help you. So I will reply on one of those channels.
That's great. And here's an example of a direct one. I have $10,000 to hire you for a speaking engagement. Are you interested?
Brilliant.
Perfect.
None of these. How are you doing today, my friend?
I
Or
I
interesting
stumbled
projects are you
upon your
working
profile.
on?
I love that one. I stumbled upon your profile. Like, oh, there it is. Well, there's Thomas's profile. I didn't know I'd be walking by that today. I love it.
Yeah.
I just rather the ones I pick up are the cold email that works the best against me, by the way, is this is a shameless cold email. I will read that. That was the subject line. Thank you
I
for
like the
acknowledging
honesty.
where you're at.
I like the honesty.
I'll be
Exactly.
like, all right, cool. I will work with that person. It might terrible offer, terrible pitch right after that. You had me till I read your pitch. Anyway, thank you, Friska, so much for coming on. I'm gonna put you in the periwinkle room, but thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day or evening, I guess, in Bali, and joining me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. See you again
I'll be right
soon.
back. I'll be right back with you. Listen, anybody who's made it this point, you rock. Friska's amazing. She's a great person to have come speak on the topics of transformation. Definitely check out her Tedx. She kills it. And not knowing that backstory that she almost didn't have the prop was that changes the. I'm gonna go rewatch that to see how she handles that. She probably has a sigh of relief in her eyes that we'll see now. Listen, anybody who's made it here and this was your first time, I hope you come back. Please go to youtube.com/@neverbeenpromoted and give a subscribe. And if you listen to the podcast, I always ask for the reviews. They mean a lot to the guests and to us to help further the mission to help you unleash your entrepreneur by cutting that tie to all the shit holding you back. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, get out there, go unleash your entrepreneur.